sheep and goats. We had those this past Wednesday right out on our front lawn. We had a sheep, we had goats, we had a llama, an alpaca. We had teacup pigs. They're real little. We even had a miniature Brahma and some rabbits and a pony. If you didn't see it, you missed it. Our preschool had a petting zoo. It was wonderful. And I was sitting in my study reading over this tale of the sheep and the goats, and the secretary came and said, "You got to go out and see those. They're outside." And I went out and I looked at the goat. There were several of them there, and they're easy to identify. They're thinner than the sheep, and they have coarse hair, and their tails stand up, whereas sheep, when you look at them, they're fatter and fluffier, and their tails hang down. And I started thinking about how easy it must be to separate sheep from goats. They don't look anything alike, but they would go out, and they would be in the world together, and then the shepherd would separate them as they came back in. It's not as easy to tell with humans. Who's good? Who's bad? Who's doing the will of the Lord? Who's not? But God can tell. God sees into our hearts. Jesus tells this parable and says that the king will look and the king will know and will separate these sheep from the goats. And he will say to the ones who are on his right, "The sheep, come into my kingdom that is prepared for you, for I was sick and you came and you ministered to me. I was thirsty and you came and you gave me something to drink. I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was in prison and you came and you visited me." And Jesus says these folks will say, "What? Huh? When did we do that? When did we see you?" Do you ever wish you could see Jesus? Where is Jesus? I'd like to see Jesus. I'd like to see where God is in this world. I'd like for the glory to be revealed to us, for God just to give us a glimpse of what God is like. And Jesus says, "You've seen it and you've missed it. I am out with those who are powerless. I am out with those who are in need. I am out with the poor, with the hurting, with the outcast. I am out with the ones that you pass by each and every day. If you want to see me, look into the face of those who are in need, because that is where I am. That is where my spirit is." It's so easy to look past those who are in need, to get so busy with our own days and our own needs, and to forget that we were placed here to be ministers of our Lord Jesus Christ. Even we who are pastors forget it. One time I had a friend who was standing back at the back greeting folks after he had preached, and he told me this story. He said that as they were coming through, there was a little boy, and he was pulling on the preacher's coattail, trying to get his attention, and all the adults were just passing him by and trying to talk to the preacher and get on out so they could have lunch. And after a moment of this, he stopped the line, and he said, "Y'all excuse me for just a minute." And he got down on one knee, and he said, "Yes, son, what can I do for you?" And the kid smiled from ear to ear, and he looked at his mom and said, "He thinks I'm a person. He thinks I'm a person." How many times in life do we miss folks? Do we not see them? Jesus says, if you see the least of these, you see me. As our attention has turned to the recoveries in the hurricane, we've done all we can to reach out to those who are in need, and we should even do more. And it reminded me of a story of a hurricane some time ago. We all remember Katrina that hit down around New Orleans. Back when that hurricane hit, my friend Matthew, who's a Lutheran preacher, was having a conversation with his son Matthias. Matthias was about 10, and they were watching the news, and Matthias said to his father, "Dad, why are all those people stuck there?" And Matthew said, "Well, son, there's not enough transportation. Most of those folks don't have vehicles. They didn't get out and they couldn't get out. There's some buses, but there's just not enough for everyone. And Matthias looked at his dad and said, if we were living down in New Orleans, would we have gotten out? And he said, oh, yes, son, we'd be fine. We have a van. We would have all gotten in the van and put our stuff in the van, and we would have gotten out. You would be okay. And then Matthias said, well, Dad, if we were down there and we had our van, would we take some of those folks with us? And his dad thought and said, well, by the time we get your mom in there and your brother, and that's the front 4 seats, we'd probably take the back seat out to get all of our stuff in there. We probably wouldn't have a lot of room. And Matthias looked at his dad and said, not even for one person, Dad? We couldn't help at least one person if we were there? And Matthew said he had to stop and think about his own heart. You see, we tend to look after ourselves first, but helping is a matter of the heart. The most amazing thing about this parable is how ignorant these folks were. Not stupid, but they didn't know. They didn't know that they had helped, and the other one said, we didn't know, we didn't do it. They were just unaware. They didn't realize where Jesus was. You see, we can only see those who Jesus would help us to help if we will open our hearts and allow Christ to transform us. When we read this parable, sometimes folks will come up to me afterwards and say, now, Pastor, that sounds a lot like Jesus is talking about salvation by works. I thought it was by grace that we were saved, and that it's only through Christ's sacrifice that we come into heaven, and that is true. But when we accept the grace of Christ, our hearts are to be transformed. We are to become new creatures. We are to look at the world as Christ looks at the world. We are to let our hearts be broken. In a little while, we're going to sing that hymn, Let Your Heart Be Broken. For a world in need, feed the mouths that hunger, soothe the wounds that bleed. Give a cup of water and a loaf of bread. Be the hands of Jesus, serving in his stead. You see, we'd rather look over it. There is plenty of need right here in our community. It is the priority of the kingdom to help those who are the least, to see those who are on the edges of society and to reach out and to minister to them. This is clear in the parable this morning, and yet it doesn't touch our heart unless we allow the Spirit to open our eyes to these folks. Some years ago, a woman named Judy came to my office. Judy was a Methodist, but I knew her from the community, and Judy came in and said, Nelson, could I and a group of other folks use your kitchen at this church to do a soup kitchen on Saturdays? We want to just get together and cook and give away food. I said, well, Judy, that's an interesting idea. I'm scratching my head thinking, why don't you do that at the Methodist church? You're a Methodist. She kind of read my mind, and she said, well, the church I go to, the kitchen isn't as big and nice as yours, and you're more centrally located in the town. We'd like to use your kitchen. And I said, well, let me check with some folks, and we'll see what we can do. And I said, Judy, where'd you get this idea? She said, well, I've been helping, and some of your folks have been helping pack backpacks for kids at school, and we pack these and they take them home, those who are hungry. And even on the weekend, we try to pack a little extra, but I just don't think these kids have enough to eat on the weekends, and we're doing all we can to help them during the week, but I'm worried that they don't have enough on the weekend, so we're just going to cook a meal, and we're going to let those come that can, and then we're going to take out food to those who can't. And I said, Judy, that sounds like it's going to take a lot of time. Don't you work? She said, oh yeah, I work, and I'm going to quit my job. In fact, I've already talked to my boss. I said, you going to quit your job, and we haven't even started the soup kitchen. She said, yeah, I went and talked to him, and he said the same thing you did. He said, why in the world are you going to start a soup kitchen, Judy? And I explained to him that I had seen these kids who were hungry, and my heart was touched, and I felt like I had to do something. And he said, yeah, but why you? And she looked back at her boss, and she said, I know you think it's amazing I'm going to quit my job to do this, but I think it's amazing that you're not doing this. You ask why me, and I ask back, why you? Why you don't do something? And I knew she was about to lay that one on me too. And I said, well, you can use the kitchen. We'll be glad to partner with you. They fed about a dozen people the first Saturday, and the next about twice that many, and then they started taking meals out, and all of a sudden they were having 40 and 50 volunteers a Saturday taking food out into the community each and every Saturday. They outgrew that kitchen and had to go get another one, and then they started a food pantry where they could feed people throughout the week, and Judy had a different job. She was now director of a soup kitchen and of a food pantry. I still scratch my head and wonder why. Why did she do that? Because she saw a need and her heart went out, and she just did that. Every Sunday as I stand here and I look out on you, I don't only see your faces. I look up and I see Jesus holding a lamb, and he's looking back at me. And if that's not enough, there are angels surrounding Jesus on this stained glass in the back of our church that you see when you turn around, and the choir looks up and sees it as well. And those angels have something written underneath them, and it is this parable of the sheep and the goats. If you go up there where you can read what it says. It says, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, shelter the stranger, visit the sick, help the prisoner, visit the fatherless. And then it adds another one that's not in this parable, but the last one says, bury the dead. I guess the artist needed another one to fill that out and thought, well, the church should bury the dead. Every once in a while I look at that list and I think, well, let's see how we're doing. Feed the hungry. Well, our church helped start Iredell Christian Ministries, a food pantry here in our community, and we got folks on the board of that. Check, we're doing okay with that. Clothe the naked. Well, we have a clothing closet. Every Thursday we give away clothes. Check, we got that one. Shelter the stranger. Well, we have a partnership with Habitat, and we help do faith builds, and every once in a while when someone has a need, we'll put them up in a hotel. Check. Visit the sick. Well, the staff and I do that every week. We're in and out of the hospitals. Check. Help the prisoners. Well, Chuck Heckel and Bob Turnseed, they go every week and they visit the prisons, and I even go once a year. Good job, right? Check. Visit the fatherless. Well, we help with the North Carolina Baptist Children's Homes. Bury the dead. I've done more funerals than I can count. Check, 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 right? No. This is not a checklist. This is not all inclusive. Rather, this is an example list of the things that we should attune our hearts to. It's always more that can be done. There are so many needs that weren't even around in Jesus' day. There is so much that we can do as individuals and as a church. You know the old saying, give a person a fish and you feed that person for a day, but if you teach them how to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. When we look out and see those who are in need, would we be willing to do even more? Would we be willing to invest ourselves even more? There's a wonderful program that many communities have started called Circles of Care. It's an anti-poverty program, and if you look at their website, it says that they have a goal of eradicating poverty. Really? Eradicating poverty? That's audacious. How are they going to do that? Well, they're going to do that by looking at poverty and discovering its roots. And they see that poverty is a generational phenomenon. It is a learned behavior. People who are in poverty don't know how to get out of poverty. They don't know those hidden rules of middle-class life. They don't know about savings or bank accounts. They don't know about setting goals. They don't know about delaying gratification and saving up for things, because everything that's in front of them is immediate and overwhelming, and it's all they can handle just to live through the day. This program of Circles does two things. The first thing it does is takes volunteers like you and me, and it teaches us what it's like to be in poverty. They do poverty simulations, and they show you that it's a little harder than you think it is. And then they gather together those who are in poverty that are ready to do something and get out, and they take them through a class, and they teach them these things about how to open a bank account, about how to set goals, about how to live a different way in life. And then that person sets their goals, and then those folks who want to help form a circle around them. They don't come and just give them money. We'd all like just to write a check. That's so much easier than actually getting involved. But they come together and they share their resources. They take them to their bank and introduce them to their banker and teach them how to open a banking account. They help them as a practice for an interview for a job, and they might help them pick out the right clothes, and they might actually give them some suggestions, and they might coach them through this. The person who's trying to get out of poverty is a circle leader. They're always in charge, and the others are there to help. And they're investing their lives. I wonder, could we do something like that? There are a lot of things we could do, but the first thing that must happen is that we must open our eyes to see those who are in need all around us, and to help as God leads us to help. What I liked about Judy was she just decided to do it, and she was going to do it. When I was standing out there looking at the sheep and the goats and the alpaca and all the other animals this week, David and Nancy Deal were out there. They were out there with Aaron, and they were just there to watch the kids play with the animals, and we were standing there talking, and I joked and said to David, why don't you steal the sheep and these goats and bring them in, and I'll have an example for Sunday morning. To which he said, Pastor, I already brought some sheep to church one Sunday. I said, really? Tell me about that. He said, some time ago, I brought in some sheep for the children to see when we were talking about some sheep in the Bible, and I just brought them to Sunday school and let the kids see them and play with them. And Nancy kind of looked at him. He said, well, Nancy thought I should have asked permission first. And this is what David said. David says, Nancy, I've been going to First Baptist Church for over 50 years. I'm a deacon. I've been a deacon several times. I've taught Sunday school for over 20 years. Just who do I need to ask permission to do something good at my church? The answer is no one. See, if you're sitting here this morning waiting for permission to do good, you got it. You can go back and say, the pastor said it's okay to do something that is good for somebody. It's as if we're pulling back, just waiting for someone else to take some initiative. Jesus said of these people, some of you got it. You saw me in the least of these, and you actually did something about it. And then others of you, you never saw it. You never did a thing. Which one do you want to be when we stand before Christ?